Sure. So I think one of the beauties of what HealthBeacon does and what adherence helps to deliver in general is outcomes on all fronts, right? And what I mean by that is positive outcomes for the patients, because I think if you don't have that positive outcome and positive experience as a patient, then none of the rest of the good stuff will happen, and it's a house of cards that will collapse, right? But what we see in how we approach adherence is that obviously if patients are more on time and on track and taking their regimen, then that leads them to forming better habits and getting into better kind of time series and so forth. And while that catches up and rolls into the SPs and manufacturers and pharmacies in general, is the more you adhere to your schedule, the more likely you are to fulfill your RX across that year, right? So what we're seeing in the adherence world is, an uplift, a measurable uplift of adherence leads to 1, 2, 3 extra script fills, depending on the cadence of the medication. Sure. So I think the missing link in a lot of adherence tracking concerns actually what's happening on the ground in the patient's home. Okay. So, historically, there's been all sorts of plays around adherence where you're relying on the patients to tell you what's happening, or you're shooting out some SMS messages and so forth. And really, nobody knows whether they land or don't, and it's kind of maybe they do, maybe they don't, but we'll never know. And you could certainly never measure that. So I think a lot of what we try to do is cover that last mile of actually what happens in the home, because I think it's when the patient is on their own, they're taking their injection, they're trying to keep on top of their treatment. That's actually when you need the support and when you need to try and get a picture of what's happening on the ground. And I think that's the missing link in a lot of adherence programs, or how people think about adherence in general. So for us, what we've developed is a smart sharp spin, a connected device effectively that sits in the patient's home, an FDA Class 2 cleared medical device. And what that does is tracks disposal of their syringe or auto injector or their medical waste into the sharp spin, and takes a time-stamped photograph of that, then pings it up to the cloud so we can verify whether it is the patient is on time and on track with the right medication. So I think it's that real-time passive tracking in the home has often been that final breadcrumb that's missing as people think about adherence. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think direction of travel, in healthcare in general, there's more focus on value, which is no bad thing, of course. But a big component of value is, RXs are being written, and these are really transformative medicines that are around today. But I think payers and general stakeholders in the ecosystem are looking for, okay, we want to get this medication to the right folks that need it. But then there's this overhanging question going, well, are they taking it? Are they filling scripts? But even if the scripts are filled and it's in the home, what happens then? Just because they have possession of the drug doesn't mean they're taking it. So I think from the perspective of either value-based outcomes or how people think about data, there's a huge link to, or directionally, there's a link, I think, between payer and value, and actually proving that the patient is taking that medication. Because if you're taking the medication and getting the outcomes, everyone is in a happy path. If you're not getting outcomes and you're taking the medication, then that's one story, and that would lead to a switch or something of that nature. But actually what we find in a lot of cases is patients aren't getting the outcomes, and they're not getting those outcomes because they're not taking that medication. So I think that idea of having a real world view of what's happening in the home helps you to get those patients back on track if they're off track, and that can then be linked back to value, and particularly the payers, in terms of proof that the patient is in fact trying their best and staying on their regimen.